Sunday night, March 22nd, New York's LaGuardia Airport.
Stop, truck one, stop. Stop, truck one, stop. Stop, truck one, stop.
Light rain, low clouds, and a runway that was about to become the scene of one of the most preventable aviation disasters in recent American history. Just before midnight, an air traffic controller's voice cuts through the frequency, desperate, repeating the same word over and over.
Stop, truck one, stop. Stop, truck one, stop.
Seconds later, a regional jet carrying 72 passengers slammed into a fire truck that should never have been on the runway. The cockpit was destroyed on impact. Both pilots were killed instantly. A flight attendant was ripped from the fuselage, still strapped to her seat, and found more than 100 meters away. She survived. Dozens of others were rushed to hospitals across Queens, a sequence of small, ordinary events that lined up in exactly the wrong order over the course of a single hour. A rejected takeoff, a strange smell in a cabin, a gate that nobody could find, a fire truck doing exactly what it was told to do, and one mistake on a radio frequency that could not be taken back. This is the story of Air Canada Express Flight 8646 and the 60 seconds that turned a routine Sunday night at LaGuardia into a catastrophe. To understand what happened that night, you first have to understand LaGuardia. It is not a large airport. Hemmed in on three sides by water, squeezed into Queens, LaGuardia handles more than 33 million passengers a year on runways that were never designed for the traffic they carry today. The taxiways are close, the runways are short, and there is almost no room for error. Runway 4 is the runway that matters in this story. It runs northeast toward Flushing Bay. Keeping LaGuardia running takes precise choreography. Controllers manage arrivals, departures, and ground vehicles simultaneously. Fire trucks, fuel trucks, maintenance vehicles, all sharing the same concrete, all depending on the tower to tell them when it is safe to move. The sequence that ended in disaster did not begin with the airplane that crashed. It began an hour earlier with a completely different flight. At approximately 10:40 on Sunday night, United Flight 2384, a Boeing 737 MAX 8, lined up on runway for departure. The crew received their takeoff clearance and began to accelerate. Then an anti-ice warning light illuminated on the flight deck. The captain rejected the takeoff. This is standard procedure. When something unexpected appears during the takeoff roll, you stop the airplane. You do not take chances. The crew informed the tower and began taxiing back to cool off the brakes. 40 minutes later, the crew tried again. The aircraft lined up on runway a second time, began its takeoff roll, and rejected a second time. 2 aborted takeoffs in one night. But now something else was wrong. A strange odor had filled the cabin. The flight attendants in the back were feeling ill. The captain declared an emergency. When an emergency is declared at a major airport, the fire trucks roll. That is the rule. But now a second problem appeared. There was no gate available for United 2384. The airplane was stuck on a taxiway with sick crew, anxious passengers, and nowhere to go. The controller began making phone calls, trying to find a gate, coordinate with the Port Authority, all while still managing every other arrival and departure at the airport. The fire station at LaGuardia sits on the opposite side of the field from where the Boeing was parked. Between the two sat Runway 4, the active landing runway. To reach the emergency aircraft, the fire trucks had to cross it. On this night, with a declared emergency pulling his attention in every direction and no easy solutions in front of him, the controller had to add one more task to the list. Clear the fire trucks across Runway 4. He would do it, and in the seconds that followed, he would realize he had made the worst mistake of his career.
Stop, truck one, stop.
At approximately 11:36 p.m., Air Canada Express Flight 8646 was on final approach to Runway 4. The aircraft was a CRJ-900, a regional jet operated by Jazz Aviation on behalf of Air Canada. It had departed Montreal more than 2 hours behind schedule and was now minutes from landing. On board were 72 passengers and 4 crew members, 2 pilots in the cockpit, 2 flight attendants in the cabin. The pilots were looking down the runway. From what they could see, it was clear. They had been given their landing clearance. Flight 8646 cleared to land Runway 4. They touched down near the 2,000-foot mark and began their rollout. Everything was normal. 1 minute before that landing clearance, on a different frequency, a voice had called the tower. Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower, requesting to cross 4 at Delta. It was the lead fire truck, along with at least one other vehicle behind it. They were heading to United 2384, the emergency aircraft on the other side of the field. They needed to cross the landing runway to get there. The controller approved the request. Truck 1 and Company, cross 4 at Delta. The truck acknowledged and began to move on to the runway. Taxiway Delta sits roughly 1/3 of the way down runway 4. A jet that has just touched down is still moving fast when it reaches that point. On a wet runway at night, stopping before Delta is not possible. The controller realized what he had done. He keyed his microphone.
Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop.
But the commands came out rapid and overlapping. He had just spoken to a Frontier aircraft taxiing nearby, and without a clear pause, switched to the fire truck.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please. Stop, truck 1, stop.
It was not immediately obvious who was being told to stop. The truck had a valid clearance. From their perspective, the urgency may not have registered as being directed at them until it was too late, and there was something else working against everyone. The fire truck and the airplane were on 2 different radio frequencies. The truck never heard the controller clear 646 to land. The pilots never heard the controller clear the truck to cross. Neither knew the other was there. Both were trusting the tower, and the tower had put them on a collision course. The pilots had no chance. A CRJ-900 rolling through the first third of a wet runway cannot stop on demand. The aircraft struck the fire truck at approximately 100 miles per hour. The cockpit disintegrated on impact. The fuselage behind it remained largely intact, but the force tipped the aircraft backward onto its tail. The fire truck flipped onto its side. Debris scattered across the runway in every direction. In the tower, the controller keyed his microphone one more time.
Jazz 646, I see you collide with a vehicle there. Just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicles are responding to you now.
There was no response from the cockpit. There would never be one. For a few moments, no one moved. Then passengers began to act on their own. Someone called out to open the emergency exits. The emergency slides did not deploy. Passengers climbed out onto the wings and jumped down to the wet tarmac. They helped each other in the dark, stepping around debris they could barely see. One passenger, Rebecca LaGuardia, was sitting in the emergency row. She waited for direction from the crew. When none came, she opened the door herself. As the passengers gathered on the runway, they could see the full extent of the damage for the first time. The cockpit was gone. The nose of the aircraft had been compressed and sheared away. Cables and metal hung from the open front of the fuselage. The airplane was tilted backward, its tail resting on the ground. And then there was the story that no one could quite believe. Solange Tremblay was the lead flight attendant on Flight 8646. She had been seated in her jump seat directly behind the cockpit, facing the passengers. When the aircraft struck the fire truck, the force of the impact ripped her seat from the airframe and ejected her from the aircraft entirely. Port Authority police found her on the tarmac more than 100 meters from the wreckage, still strapped into her seat. She was alive. Her right leg was shattered in multiple places. She would need surgery, but she was breathing and conscious. An aviation safety expert would later say that the 4-point harness on her jump seat likely saved her life. The 2 pilots were not as fortunate. Antoine Forest was 30 years old. He flew his first airplane at 16. He worked as a bush pilot for Air Saguenay, then moved to Exact Air and joined Jazz Aviation in 2022 as a first officer. Mackenzie Gunther was also young, also building a career in regional aviation. Both were described by the head of the Federal Aviation Administration as 2 young men at the start of their careers. Both were killed on impact. They had done nothing wrong. They had landed the airplane exactly as they were supposed to. The runway was supposed to be clear. The question everyone asked in the hours that followed was simple. How does this happen? How does a fire truck end up on an active runway while an airplane is landing? At one of the busiest airports in the United States, with radar systems designed to prevent exactly this, with trained controllers, trained firefighters, and procedures that have been refined over decades. The answer is not one failure. It is several, stacked on top of each other in the space of a few minutes. The first and most significant factor is the way communications were structured that night. The controller was speaking to the airplane on one radio frequency and to the fire truck on another. This is standard at American airports. Aircraft use tower frequency. Ground vehicles use ground frequency. But it means that the fire truck never heard the controller clear Jazz 646 to land, and Jazz 646 never heard the controller clear the fire truck to cross. Both were operating in isolation, each trusting that the controller was keeping the picture clear. When that single point of coordination failed, neither side had any way to know what the other was doing. The second factor is workload. By the time the fire truck requested to cross runway 4, the controller had already been managing a declared emergency for nearly 30 minutes. He had been making phone calls, coordinating with the ramp, the port authority, and the airline. He had been looking for a gate that did not exist. He had been arranging stair trucks, and throughout all of this, he was still managing every arrival and departure at the airport. When the fire truck called for crossing clearance, the controller approved it, likely without fully reconciling that he had cleared an airplane to land on the same runway just 1 minute earlier. It was a lapse measured in seconds, in a job where seconds are everything. The third factor is visibility. 6 miles in light rain and mist does not sound dangerous, but on an airport surface at night, it changes everything. Runway lights are designed to outline edges and center lines for landing aircraft. They do not illuminate the pavement the way streetlights illuminate a road. A fire truck crossing the runway would have headlights pointing forward and taillights pointing backward, but very little light on its sides. From the cockpit of a CRJ-900 rolling at over 90 miles per hour, a dark truck crossing ahead in the rain may have been nearly invisible until the final seconds. The fourth factor is the airport itself. LaGuardia has ASDEX, an advanced surface detection system installed at 35 of America's busiest airports. It is designed to track aircraft and vehicles on the ground and alert controllers to potential conflicts. The National Transportation Safety Board has requested a full replay of the ASDEX display from that night, whether the system generated an alert, whether the fire truck was visible on the controller's screen, and whether that alert came in time to make a difference, are all questions that remain unanswered as of this recording. And then there is the broader context that no one in aviation wants to talk about, but everyone knows. The Federal Aviation Administration has been chronically short of air traffic controllers for years. LaGuardia's staffing target is 37 controllers. At the time of this accident, there were 33, with 7 more still in training. Training a controller to work the LaGuardia airspace takes more than a year. Late at night, staffing is reduced further. Positions are combined. One controller may handle responsibilities that during the day would be split among 2 or more. The NTSB has collected staffing records, sign-in sheets, and time cards from that night, but has not yet released verified information on exactly how many controllers were working when the collision occurred. None of these factors alone caused this accident. That is how it always works in aviation. It is never one thing. It is a sequence, a chain of events where each link is manageable on its own, but together they form something no one saw coming until it was too late. Within hours of the collision, the NTSB launched a full investigation team. 25 specialists arrived on scene, some driving through the night because flights into New York were disrupted, and TSA lines stretched for hours due to a partial government shutdown. The agency's chairwoman, Jennifer Homendy, led the team personally. Both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder were recovered. Because the aircraft had come to rest tilted backward on its tail, crews had to cut a hole through the roof of the fuselage to reach them. The cockpit voice recorder was confirmed undamaged and driven immediately to NTSB laboratories in Washington. The flight data recorder was to follow the next day. Together, they will tell investigators exactly what the pilot saw, said, and did in the final seconds of the flight. Investigation groups have been formed covering operations, aircraft systems, structures, air traffic control, and airport operations. The ASDEX replay has been requested. The air traffic controller has been removed from duty, which is standard procedure, not a determination of fault. He will be interviewed. Transport Canada has joined the investigation alongside the NTSB under the rules of Annex 13, because the aircraft was operated by a Canadian carrier. Runway 4 will remain closed for days as the wreckage is documented and removed piece by piece. The preliminary report will come in weeks. The final report may take more than a year, and somewhere in those pages will be recommendations, changes to procedures, to communications protocols, to staffing requirements, to the way fire trucks and landing aircraft share the same concrete at the same time. But no report will undo what happened on that runway. Antoine Forrest dreamed of flying from the time he was a boy in Coteau-du-Lac. He was in the cockpit of his first airplane at 16. He worked his way up through the hard roads of Canadian aviation, flying bush planes in remote Quebec before earning his place at Jazz Aviation in 2022. He was 30 years old. Mackenzie Gunther was walking the same path, building the same kind of career, carrying the same kind of quiet ambition that drives young people to choose a life in the sky. The FAA administrator called them 2 young men at the start of their careers. They flew the approach correctly. They touched down where they were supposed to. They were slowing down exactly as the procedure required, and the runway was supposed to be empty. On a rainy Sunday night in March, a Boeing 737 rejected its takeoff. A strange odor filled its cabin. No gate was available. A fire truck was sent to help. It needed to cross a runway. A controller, stretched thin by an emergency he had been managing for half an hour, gave permission. And 60 seconds later, two pilots who had done everything right paid for a mistake that was never theirs to make. The investigation will determine what failed, what must change, what must never be allowed to happen again. But what is already known, what does not require a final report to understand, is that the system built to protect everyone on that airport failed the two people who needed it most. Their names were Antoine Forrest and Mackenzie Gunther. They deserved to go home that night. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.